cities all over America are becoming gang-infested war zones. To live in a large American city today without a firearm, rifle, pistol, or shotgun is increasingly risky and could even be very foolish, and to live with one may be soon illegal. More and more of America's cities are becoming war zones. To be disarmed in these cities, while most criminals, muggers, gangs, etc., are armed, could be costly or even fatal. If Obama Inc. succeeded in disarming the American people, you would be sitting behind locked doors in your home or apartment, as many did during the Los Angeles riots in a number of years ago, with nothing but a baseball bat to protect yourself and your family. That is, until they outlaw baseball bats as dangerous lethal weapons. The following article by Michael Snyder shows why, as an urban dweller, you do not want to be disarmed. Large U.S. cities that the rest of the world used to look at in envy are now being transformed into gang-infested hellholes with skyrocketing crime rates. Cities such as Chicago, Detroit, Camden, East St. Louis, New Orleans, and Oakland were once bustling with economic activity. But as industry has fled those communities, poverty has exploded, and so has criminal activity. Meanwhile, financial problems have caused all of those cities to significantly reduce their police forces. Sadly, the same pattern is being repeated in hundreds of communities all over the nation. The mainstream media loves to focus on mass shooters such as Adam Lanza, but the reality is that gang violence is a far greater problem in the United States than mass shooters ever will be. There are approximately 1.4 million gang members living in America today, according to the FBI. That number has shot up by a whopping 40% just since 2009. There are several factors fueling this trend. Unemployment amongst our young people is at an epidemic level. About 1 out of every 3 U.S. children lives in a home without a father, and there are millions of young men who have come home into this country. 4, 3, 2, 1. There are several factors fueling this trend. Unemployment among our young people is at an epidemic level. About 1 out of every 3 U.S. children lives in a home without a father, and there are millions of young men who have come into this country illegally and have no way to legally support themselves once they arrive in our cities. Gangs provide a support system, a feeling of community, and a sense of purpose for many young people. Unfortunately, most of these gangs use violence and crime to achieve their goals, and they are taking over communities all over America. If your community is not a gang-infested war zone yet, you should consider yourself to be very fortunate. If nothing is done about this, the violence and the crime that is fueled by these gangs will continue to spread, and eventually nearly every single community in the United States will be affected by it. Let's take a closer look at some of the large cities all over America that are degenerating into gang-infested war zones. Four, 3, 2, 1. Four, 3, 2, 1. Unfortunately, most of these gangs use violence and crime to achieve their goals, and they are taking over communities all over America. If your community is not gang-infested war zone yet, you should consider yourself to be very fortunate. I've already read that. War zones. 4, 3, 2, 1. East St. Louis has a national reputation for being a city that you want to avoid. The following is from a recent Bloomberg article about the growing crime that is about 4, 3, 2, 1. East St. Louis has a national reputation for being a city that you want to avoid. The following is from a recent Bloomberg article about the growing crime in that community. Dodging open manholes where thieves had swiped cast iron covers, Stephen Wigington drives the crumbling streets of his hometown, East St. Louis, Illinois, pointing out new landmarks in America's most violent city. There's the shopping mall where a police officer was shot in the face, a youth center that saw a triple homicide in September, and scattered about the city of 27,000 are brightly lit gas stations that serve as magnets for carjackers, hit-and-run robbers, and killers. It's the Wild West, said Wigington, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Illinois. Today, the murder rate in East St. Louis is 17 times higher than the national average, but financial problems have forced huge cuts to the police budget. The number of police patrolling the streets of East St. Louis was reduced by 33% between 2008 and 2011. Police in this city admit that they are outgunned and outmanned, but there is not much that can be done about it. Camden. Camden, New Jersey is another city that has experienced huge cuts to the police budget. Their police force shrank by about a third between 2008 and 2011. Today, Camden is considered to be one of the most dangerous cities in America, and it has a murder rate that is about 10 times higher than New York City. The gangs have a very strong hold over Camden, and kids kill kids on a regular basis in the city. The following is a brief excerpt from the recent article about the horrible violence that is plaguing Camden. Four, 3, 2, 1. At the Vigil last week, residents prayed that Camden would simply find peace and that the masked gunman who killed Jewel Manier and Cahill Gibson would be caught. As it grew darker, Michael Benjamin stood toward the back of the crowd and shook his head. I've known at least 45 kids who've been killed in my lifetime, he said. I stopped counting in 2004, though. Here we go. Chicago. In recent years, there have been massive cuts to the police budget in Chicago due to financial difficulties. At the same time, gang activity has dramatically increased in the city. As a result, Chicago has become known for murders and violence. The murder rate in Chicago was about 17% higher in 2012 than it was in 2011. And Chicago is now considered to be the deadliest global city. This in spite of stringent gun control, which of course only disarms honest, law-abiding citizens, not the criminals and the gangs. If you can believe it, the number of murders in Chicago during 2012 was roughly equivalent to the number of murders in the entire country of Japan during 2012. And the primary reason for all this violence in Chicago is the gangs. There are only about 200 police officers assigned to Chicago's gang enforcement unit. It is their job to handle the estimated 100,000 gang members living in the city. Approximately 80% of all murders and shootings in the city of Chicago are gang-related, and as the gangs continue to grow in size, the violence in the city is going to get even worse. If Barack Obama wants to do something about violence in America, perhaps he should start with his home city, and not by disarming honest, law-abiding citizens who need to protect themselves. Detroit. Detroit is a perfect example of where the rest of America is headed. Detroit used to be one of the greatest manufacturing cities the world has ever seen, but over the past several decades, the economic infrastructure of Detroit has been gutted as America's factories have been moved overseas, and now there is very little industry left in the city. Over half the children in the city live in poverty, and a sense of hopelessness hangs in the air. At the same time, financial problems have forced the city to lay off huge numbers of police. Back in 2005, there were about 4,000 police officers in Detroit. Today, there are only about 2,500, and another 100 are scheduled to be eliminated from the force soon. Meanwhile, crime in Detroit just continues to get even worse. There were 377 homicides in Detroit in 2011. In 2012, that number rose to 411. Things have gotten so bad that even the Detroit police are telling people to enter Detroit at your own risk. New Orleans. New Orleans was a crime-infested city even before Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. But life has never quite been the same since that time. The gangs have a very strong presence in the city, and there simply are not enough financial resources to keep crime in check. If New Orleans was considered to be a separate nation, it would have the second highest murder rate on the entire planet. South Africa would be first. There are some areas of New Orleans that you simply do not ever want to venture into at night. Oakland. Today there are 626 police officers in Oakland, California. That is about a 25% decline than from the 837 police officers that were patrolling the streets of Oakland back in December 2008. Predictably, criminals have stepped in and taken advantage of the situation. At one point in 2012, burglaries in the city of Oakland were up 43% over the previous year. If you can believe it, more than 11,000 homes, cars, and businesses were burglarized in Oakland during 2012. That breaks down to approximately 33 burglaries a day. Stockton. Police cuts in the city of Stockton, California have been so severe that the Stockton Police Officers Association ran a billboard advertisement with the following message at one point: "Welcome to the second most dangerous city in California. Stop laying off cops." At the same time, crime in Stockton continues to get even worse. There have been more than 250 food store robberies in Stockton since the month of April, and there is no indication that crime in the city is going to slow down anytime soon. By the way, the April they're talking about is April 2012. This is the February 2013 of the Advisor. I'm going to break it off here right now. This has, I think, been quite long enough. I will be back with, well, what I hope is the ending. It's going to be called "So What is the Solution?" Peace out, all.